Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Fine. Okay. So sorry for the apologies for the bit delay. So we did have a technical issue when we are planning to join to the session. So basically, that's why we are basically 15 to 20 minutes after the scheduled time. Right. Okay. So basically, this will be the final session for AAT final auditing subject. So basically, when we are talking about the plan for today, is to look at the paper analysis first. Okay, just to look at the paper analysis first. Then after that, we will be moving to the model paper, and we will be discussing a few important points which is applicable to the model paper. And at the final stage, I will give some advices for you to how to tackle the exam. So you're free to ask any questions. Either Sinhala language or English language is preferred. Right. Okay. So when you look at when you analyze the past 5 papers starting from 2024, right? So when you look at the 5 papers starting from 2024 and ending from 2022 January. So these 5 papers basically we have discussed in the physical class as well. And when you look at the areas where the questions has been tested. So basically you have section A, section B, and section C. And I hope the screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So when you look at section A, as we already know, there are 4 questions. For section A, there are 4 questions. For each question, the allocated marks will be 5. So altogether, you have 20 marks there. Right. So when you look at section B, there are 3 questions, 10 marks for a question. So the total allocation would be 30 marks. Where section C, basically you will be having 2 questions. We are 25 marks for a question. So the total allocation would be 50. So this is how your paper has been structured with regard to your subject. Right. Okay. So when you look at, so we'll analyze section A first. අපි මුලින්ම section A එක පොඩ්ඩක් analyze කරලා බලමු. So for an example, when you analyze the past 5 papers starting from 2024 January and ending from 22 January, basically the structure of the paper is much more similar to each paper. So basically when you look at question number 1, most of the time corporate governance has been tested. Most of the time, corporate governance has been tested. So in that context, corporate governance is an area where your high attention needs to be devoted in the upcoming paper as well. Right. Then when you look at question number 2, when you analyze the past 5 papers, every time, question number 2, tested from risk. Every time, question number 2, tested from risk. අවදානම කියන කොටසෙන් තමයි ප්‍රශ්නාංක 2 අහලා තියෙන්නේ. So specifically the risk management framework. So question number 2 is normally tested from risk, whereas in 2022 July paper, question number 1 also tested from risk. Right. So in that context, risk is basically the chapter 2 of your syllabus. So this time as well, this can be considered as a most probable area where you will be getting 1 question for section A. Right. Then when you look at question number 3, when you analyze the past 5 papers, question number 3 always tested from assurance engagement. Question number 3 always tested from assurance engagement. So therefore, high attention needs to be devoted to assurance engagement as well. සහතික වීමේ සේවා කියලා අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නේ. එතකොට එතන ප්‍රශ්නාංක 3 all the time. So the question number 3 has been came from assurance engagement. Then question number 4 is from quality control. තත්ත්වපාලනය. Question number 4 came from quality control. When you analyze the last 5 papers, so every year, every time, so basically question number 4 came from quality control. So in that context, when you analyze the section A, when you analyze section A of your paper, you need to focus on main 4 topics. When you analyze section A, if you want to obtain 20 marks out of 20, I would say you need to concentrate on mainly 4 theoretical aspects. Number 1 would be the corporate governance. I assume that a question will come for this paper as well. Then risk management framework, including the internal and external risk analysis. Then assurance engagement, sahathika veeme sewawan. Then the quality control. Right. So those are the main 4 areas where your attention needs to be devoted to when you're analyzing section A. එතකොට section A එකේ පුතා කලින් තිබිච්ච papers පහම අරගෙන අපි analyze කරලා බැලුවොත් මෙන්න මේ theories වලින් තමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට check කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක නිසා මේ theory ටික හොඳට බලාගෙන යන්න. එතකොට you will be getting the comfort of the exam paper. Right. Then when you look at question B, question B, basically audit report is one of the areas which has been tested very frequently. Audit report. So audit report is one of the area which has been tested very frequently. Right. Apart from that, high attention needs to be devoted to fraud and errors as well. High attention needs to be devoted to fraud and error as well. Okay, so when you see this, there is a pattern. මේක ඔයා බැලුවොත් ඔයාලට පොඩි pattern එකක් හොයා ගන්න පුළුවන් paper එකේ. So 2022 January fraud and errors tested. Then 2022 July no fraud and errors audit report tested. Then again 2023 January fraud and errors tested, no audit report. Then 2023 July no fraud and errors, again audit report tested. Then the previous paper 2024 January, again fraud and error tested, no audit report. So therefore, higher probability is there for the upcoming paper for audit report. I can say audit report එක විශේෂ අවධානයක් යොමු කරන්න ඕන පාඩමක්. So if a question comes from audit report, it will be one question for entire 10 marks. Right. Then another area where your attention needs to be devoted to code of ethics, Achara Dharma, code of ethics. Every year, when you analyze the last 5 papers, every year, a question for every exam, a question came from code of ethics as well. Achara Dharma වලිනුත් අපි ගත්තොත් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ලකුණු 10ක ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. So for an example, when you analyze these two, section A and section B, so that here we have 20 marks for main 4 areas, where out of that 30, if a questions come from audit report and if a questions come from code of ethics, then you will be having 20 marks as well. Clear? Right. Are we clear on these 2 areas? මේ දෙකේ මොනවද ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද? Any questions? You're free to ask any questions if you need any further clarifications. Right. Okay. Then when you come to section C, okay, so then when you come to section C, one question will come from internal controls. One question will come from internal controls. So when you analyze the past 5 papers, every time one question came from internal controls where the total marks would be 25. So we are expecting the same trend for the upcoming paper as well. Internal control අභ්‍යන්තර පාලනය කියන පාඩමෙනුත් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ලකුණු 25ක ප්‍රශ්නයක් එනවම තමයි. So when you analyze this, you can analyze, you can identify the theoretical areas where I would say approximately 65 marks approximately 65 marks will be tested. මේ paper analysis එක ඔයාට හොඳට අධ්‍යයනය කරොත් තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් paper එකෙන් ලකුණු 65ක්ම අහන්න පුළුවන් probability එක තියෙන පාඩම් ටික මොනවද කියලා. So that you can take the basic understanding about the theoretical aspects which is going to test at the exam, which covers almost 65 marks. So for an example, section A, you have 20 marks. Basically, higher probabilities there for corporate governance, then risk, assurance engagement, and quality control. Then you will be having 20 marks. Then when you take section B, code of ethics, probable 10 marks. This type, then audit report as well, probably 10 marks. So out of this 30, if the questions are tested from these two areas, you will be getting another 20 marks as well. So here 20 plus 20 comes to 40. Then when you go to section C, 100% guaranteed, 25 marks will come from internal controls. So in that context, as a student, you will be probably know the theoretical aspects which is going to tested in the upcoming paper, which covers almost 65 marks. එතකොට පුතේ ඔයා exam එකට යනකොට ලකුණු 65ක් ඊට පාඩම් ටික දැනගෙන නම් යන්නේ. So those are the areas where high attention needs to be devoted to. Then apart from internal controls, there are a few other additional standards again frequently tested at the exam. For section C, specifically going concern, higher probability is there. Going concern, අඛණ්ඩ පැවැත්ම, higher probability is there for going concern. Then audit materiality, SLIUS 320, audit materiality. Then I would say related parties, සම්බන්ධිත පාර්ශවයන්. Then audit planning, විගණන සැලසුම් කරණය. So likewise, these are the other probable standard which might tested at the exam. So when you look at section B and section C, again you will see a link. Okay, when you look at section B and section C, again you will identify a link. For an example, 2022 January paper, section B covers fraud and errors, whereas section C covers audit report. තේරුණාද මෙතන section B එකේ fraud and errors ඇහුවා, මෙතන audit report එක ඇහුවා. Clear? Right. When you go to the July paper, audit report has been tested here. Audit report has been tested here. Then 2023 January, fraud and errors tested in question B, and audit report again tested in section C. Clear? Then when you go to July 2023, audit report has been tested in section B, whereas fraud and errors tested, sorry. Okay, where fraud and errors tested in section C. Then again, when you go to the last paper, 2024 January paper, fraud and errors tested in section B, and audit report again tested. Audit report again tested in section C. So likewise, you need to understand the pattern where the examiner is going to test on the exams. So are we clear on this? Are we clear on this? Any questions? Right. Okay. So there is a question came from one of the students. Sir, we didn't do any past papers in our vLearning. So when you are doing questions, please try to give more clarifications clearly. Okay. So let me clarify as much as possible. So basically, when you look at from vLearning English perspective, I'm not the one who conducted the vLearning series, but let me have a chat with the management as well. But are there any students who are basically participating into this session who are physically came to our class? මගේ physical පන්තිර ආපු කවුරු හරි ළමයි ඉන්නවද join වෙලා? Okay, so there are few. So in that context, what I can request for the vLearning student is to talk to the physical students who basically came to the class, because for an example, we have done almost 5 papers there. Okay, we have done almost 5 papers there and we have discussed a model paper. And as of now, we have completed 6 papers for both Sinhala medium and English medium, since I'm conducting in both mediums. So with the upcoming paper, which is going to discuss today, so that I have already done altogether 7 papers for them. So in that context, I wanted for the students who has not practiced any past paper questions, so that you can talk to the students who physically presented and you can get the clarifications as and when you need. Is that fine for you? Right, okay. Fine. Okay, so before we move to the paper itself, so let me summarize. Let me summarize the probable areas which will be tested, which might be tested at the exam. So when you look at from section A, take down this. When you look at from section A, basically corporate governance, then risk, then assurance engagement, then quality control. Okay, so those are the main areas where your high attention needs to be devoted to. So when you look at from corporate governance perspective, it's a vast area, including the audit committee. Yeah, including the audit committee. Then the corporate governance responsibilities. Then the advantages likewise. So all these things we have discussed in the theory class. So when you look at from risk, specifically risk management framework. Then when you look at from assurance engagement perspective, specifically the definitions, then the elements of assurance engagement. We have done long discussions on those areas in our physical class. Then when you look at from quality control perspective, specifically elements of quality control, there are 6 elements. Right, so those are the most probable area for section A. Then when you look at section B, audit report, then fraud and errors, are the main 2 areas. Then after that, ethical requirements, specifically threats, then the practical aspects which we have discussed in the class. So those are the most probable areas for section B. Then when you look at section C, internal controls, a massive area. internal controls, a massive area where we have discussed 7 processes. Then we discuss about the definitions of internal controls. Then elements. Then we discuss about spam soap. So those are the main areas where attention needs to be devoted to. Then apart from that, when you look at from standards perspective, SLS 570 going concern, then SLAUS 320 materiality, then SLAUS 550 related parties, then SLAUS 230 audit documentation. These are the areas where you need to mainly focus on when you are predicting the upcoming paper. Clear? Are we clear on this? මේක තේරුණාද ඔක්කොමලට? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, fine. Right. This one also we have completed. Okay, now we are moving to the model paper. Right, so I'm not having the privilege to discuss all this. Okay, so I'm not having the privilege to discuss all this, but let me clarify the most important areas. Right. Okay, so when you go up in the paper, okay, can all of you see the paper?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Right. So question number 1. So if there is a theoretical aspects which has been directly tested, I'm not going to waste my time, spend my time on that. So that we'll talk about the theoretical aspects straight away. So Galaxy Private Limited appointed NM Associates, a firm of chartered accountants, as their statutory auditor. The auditor is responsible for the audit of the financial statements and to express an opinion as to the true and fair view of the financial statement. So identify 3 parties who involved in the assurance engagement. So basically, which has been tested from assurance engagement. So basically, when you are conducting an audit, there are 3 parties. Number 1, users of the financial statements. If not the intended users of the financial statements, then the parties who are responsible for the financial statement plus the practitioner. Okay, so likewise, you need to identify the 3 parties. And when you look at from the assurance engagement perspective, there are 5 elements of assurance engagement. So what are those 5 elements? Number 1, tripartite relationship is there. So in that context, you need to focus on CREST factors. You need to focus on CREST factors. So CREST factors will give you the 5 elements. So what do you mean by CREST? What is this C stands for? Any guesses? What is this C stands for? That is basically criteria. That is basically criteria. R stands for report, assurance report. Then E stands for audit evidence. Then S stands for subject matter. And T stands for tripartite relationship. Here, they wanted you to identify the 3 parties. Okay, so who are the triparties? The users of the financial statements, the parties who are responsible for the financial statements, plus the practitioner. Right, okay, then state 2 fundamental principles in the code of ethics. NN Associates should demonstrate as auditors of Galaxy Private Limited. So when we are discussing the ethical requirements, we have discussed how many ethical requirements? There are several ethical requirements. So altogether we discuss 6. Number 1, independence. Number 2, integrity. Number 3, objectivity. Number 4, professional competence and due care. Number 5, confidentiality. Number 6, professional behavior. Okay, so those are the main 6 ethical requirements which we have discussed. So out of these 6, you need to state 2 fundamental principles in order to obtain these 2 marks. Okay, so if you know the assurance engagement, if you know the ethical requirements, so these 5 marks are given to you. Close eyes, you can get the 5 marks. Are we clear? Right. Okay, so we are basically moving to the second question. Kanchana is audit manager for the recurrent audit of a private limited company. When reviewing the permanent audit file, when you see this word permanent audit file, then you need to understand the standard which is going to test here, which is basically 230 audit documentation. Before starting his field work, he noted that previous engagement letter filed in the permanent audit file. Number 1, state 3 matters to be included in an engagement letter of a recurrent audit. Here, this question has been tested from SLA US 210, terms of audit engagement. This has been tested from the standard called SLA US 210, terms of audit engagement. Terms of audit engagement. Right. So basically, when you are reviewing the standard, you will be identified. There are 16 points to be included. There are 16 points to be included. So out of those 16, you need to state 3 in order to obtain these 3 marks. Then state 2 other informations included in the permanent file. This has been tested from the standard called SLA US 230 audit documentation. So when we are discussing the audit documentation standard, we discuss the audit file is basically segregated into 2. Number 1 would be the current year audit file. Number 2 would be the permanent audit file. So current year audit file is the audit file where we are preparing while including the documents which is applicable for the year under review, which is applicable for the current financial year. But permanent audit file is a file where we will be maintaining starting from the beginning of the audit, and we will be basically carry forward that audit for the future, carry forward that file to the future audits as well. So those are the 2 areas which has been tested. Right. Then question number 3. They are tested from audit evidence. Audit evidence, SLAS 500. Audit evidence, SLAS 500. Audit evidence is all the information used by the auditor in arriving at conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based, right? State 2 factors that influence reliability of the audit evidence. So reliability is considered as one of the key elements of audit evidence, right? So then you need to state 2 factors which will have an influence on the reliability. So specifically, what are the 2 factors? Number 1 would be the source. The source which you are obtaining the audit evidences is impacting the reliability. Number 1, whether it is internal or external. So that's what the source refers to. Whether it is internal or whether it is external. Internal and external. Number 2, the way you obtain the audit evidence. The way you obtain the audit evidence, whether it is in written format or whether it is in oral format. So those are the answers for question number 3, section A. Then state 3 procedures that the auditor performed to identify the possible related party transactions. So this has been tested from related parties. SLS 550. Related parties. When we are discussing the related party standard, we have identified the procedures where the auditor are supposed to perform. So out of those procedures, you need to state 3. So for an example, number 1, as an auditor, you need to understand, you need to obtain an understanding first. You need to have a in detail understanding with regard to related parties and related party transactions. That is number 1. Number 2, when you are inspecting documents, when you are vouching documents, high attention needs to be devoted to the related party transactions. That is number 2. Number 3, so identification of related parties and disclosure of related parties in the financial statements is basically a responsibility of the management. So in that context, in order to make the comfort, in order to get the comfort with regard to the completeness of the related party disclosures and the transactions, as an auditor, you will be requesting a management representation. When you are conducting an audit, you will be requesting a management representation from the management. So upon completing all these audit procedures, once you identify an audit, once you identify a related party transaction, you need to check 2 things. Number 1, whether that related party transaction has been taken place under the normal course of business. If it is yes, no issues at all. But if there are any related party transactions which has been taken place within the business organization, which is not comes under the normal course of business activities, that is a situation where your attention needs to be devoted to. So likewise, we did have in detail discussion when we are discussing the theoretical aspects. So out of those procedures which we learn in the classroom, you need to write down 3. Clear? Right. So these are straightforward ones which we have discussed in the class. Okay, so you are the audit manager of W Associates, a firm of chartered accountants. You are given a team to conduct the audit of GT Holdings PLC, a finance company, and there will be a meeting of you and the audit partner in charge. So that is basically they are referring to whom? They are referring to the engagement partner with the audit committee of GT Holdings. So they are going to test about audit committee. State 3 general areas that you should obtain knowledge under industry, regulatory and other external factors of GT Holdings. So this question has been tested from SLS 350, knowledge of the business. Then number 2, you need to state 2 functions of the audit committee where this has been tested from corporate governance. Clear? Right. So these are the types of questions which will be tested in section A. So for an example, whatever the theories which you are learning in the classroom will be tested as it is at the exam. පන්තිකාම්බරය තුල ඔයා ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙන න්‍යායාත්මක සිද්ධාන්තයන් ටික ඒ විදිහටම exam එකේදී test කරනවා. So that is why section A is pretty much important to all the students. So make sure that you will be obtain 20 marks out of 20 for section A. ඒක නිසා හොඳට focus කරගන්න section A එකට ලකුණු 20න් 20ම ගන්නවා කියලා. So whatever the theories which you are learning in the classroom will be tested as it is at the exam for section A. So no practical aspects. So whatever the theories which you are learning in the classroom will be tested as it is. Right? Are we clear on section A? Any questions on section A? මොන හරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද section A එකේ? Right, okay. Okay, now we'll shift to few questions which has been tested for section B. Right, question B, sorry, section B, question 5. Assurance engagement is an engagement in which a practitioner aims to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidences in order to express a conclusion designed to enhance the degree of confidence of the intended users other than the responsible party about the subject matter information. So they are going to test about assurance engagement. So basically the people who physically came to our class will know that this is one of the definitions, very first definitions which we learn in the classroom with regard to assurance engagement. So that definition which we learn in the classroom came to the exam paper as it is. Right, you are required to explain what do you mean by sufficient and appropriate audit evidence? What do you mean by sufficient and appropriate audit evidence? So what is the difference? What is the difference between sufficient and appropriate audit evidence? Sufficient means how much of audit evidences that you are going to collect. How much of audit evidences that you are going to collect. That's what you referred as sufficient. Then what do you mean by appropriateness? Appropriateness refers to relevance, reliability, and the quality of the audit evidences which you obtain. So sufficient refers to how much of audit evidences that you are going to collect. Then the appropriateness is applicable to the relevance, reliability, and the quality of the audit evidences that you are going to expect. So what is the difference between sufficient and appropriate? Sufficient, you can measure. This is measurable. You can measure this. That this is measurable, but appropriateness you can't measure. So the difference is this is quantitative and this is qualitative. Right. Then explain 3 key requirements which should be performed when accepting and continuing the assurance engagement. Okay, so what are the key requirements to be fulfilled when you're accepting and continuing a assurance engagement? So basically when considering about acceptance, so you're accepting basically new clients. We discussed this when we are discussing quality control. So you are accepting the assurance engagement of a new client. Then you will be continuing the assurance engagement of an existing client. අලුත් සේවාදායකයෙක්ගේ සහතික වීමක් බාර ගන්නවා. දැනට ඉන්න සේවාදායකයෙක්ගේ සහතික වීමක් පවත්වාගෙන යනවා. So what are the key 3 requirements where your needs to be performed when you're accepting an assurance engagement? Number 1, you need to check whether you are comply with ethical requirements. ආචාර ධර්මයන්ට අනුකූලයිද කියන එක බලන්න ඕනේ. We discuss all this. The people who came physically to the class, we discuss a topic called preliminary engagement activities. This is what the examiner is going to test. So you need to check whether you are complied with the ethical requirements. Number 2, you need to check whether you have the required skills, competencies, and the required resources to carry out this assurance engagement. ඔයාට මේ engagement එක කරගෙන යන්න දක්ෂතාවය, පළපුරුදු කුසලතාවය තියෙනවද කියලා බලන්න. So that is number 2. Then number 3, you need to evaluate the management integrity. Very important point. You need to evaluate the management integrity. කළමනාකාරීත්ව අවංකභාවය සම්බන්ධයෙන් බලන්න. Then after that, after performing all these 3, then you sign the engagement letter. Then you sign the engagement letter. So those are the main 4 activities which should be performed by the auditor before taking the final call with regard to the acceptance of a new client and the continuation of an existing client. Right. Okay, someone is asking, so use any other color other than red. Okay. Then Anfas is concerned, so do we have an answer paper as well? No, we don't have an answer paper. So do you think that you need an answer paper for this? because the main objective of this session is to discuss the critical questions plus the probable areas which might come in the exam. So since these are 100% theories which we are discussing in the physical classroom, so I'm not in a position to discuss all these in detail, but let me have a chat with management so that I'll try my level best to give the answers sheet as well. Right. Before we move forward, so are there any students? Just raise the hands of the students who basically participated in today, who have not learned from me. Okay, how many are there? Right, okay. So let me have a chat with management and see. Right, so we are going to discuss a very important question. Question number 6. Okay, so this is an area you need to think a lot. Right, so we'll analyze this question. Okay, question number 6. You are the senior in charge of the audit of George Associate, a firm of chartered accountants which conducts the audit of the financial statements of Sara Trading Private Limited for the year ended 31st December 2019. So their accounting period starting from 1st of January 2019 and ending from 31st December. So basically, the auditor is auditing the financial statement covering the period of 2019. Okay, the following information was included in the audit file. Audit materiality used at the planning stage is 1.7 million. Okay. What this 1.7 million refers to? Is it overall materiality or is it performance materiality? Is it overall materiality or is it performance materiality? This one mainly refers to overall materiality level. Unless otherwise the examiner clearly mentioned it is performance materiality, we need to assume that that is overall materiality. Right. The company completed a construction of an office building on 1st October 2019 and it was available for use on that date. The cost of the construction of the building was 120 million. Right. So if you receive a question like this, better to have in detail analysis. Right. So we'll analyze the question. So we'll analyze this question. Okay, the accounting period starting from 1st of January 2019 and ending from 31st December 2019. So as an auditor, you are basically auditing the financial period of 2019. Clear? Right. Okay, so the material level is basically 1.7 million. Materiality, which is decided at the planning stage, it's basically 1.7 million. Right. The company completed the construction of office building on 1st of October 2019. 1st of October 2019, they have completed the construction of the building. 1st of October 2019, that is 9 months from the beginning of the accounting period. They have completed the construction on 1st of October 2019, right? And that asset is available for use. What does that mean? This is basically available for use from 1st of October onwards. So in that context, for the remaining 3 months, this building should be depreciated. For the remaining 3 months, this building should be depreciated. Right. The cost of the construction of the building was rupees 120 million. So the construction cost of the building is basically 120 million. 120 million. So when you get a question like this, you need to analyze the question very deeply. The building are depreciated over 30 years on the straight line basis at cost. So the building is going to depreciate for a period of 30 years on straight line basis. So in that context, what would be the average depreciation for an entire financial year? That is basically 4 million. For an entire financial year, this has to be depreciated for a value of 4 million. But this building is basically used for this building construction completed on 1st of October 2019. So in that context, what would be the depreciation for the 3 months period? So in that context, you need to divide this 4 million by 12 and multiply it by 3. So you will be getting answer of 1 million. So in that context, the company should depreciate. Is it okay if I use a red color for this slide? මේ slide එකට මම red color use කරාට කමක් නැද්ද? Is it okay? Right. Okay. For a period of 3 months, the depreciation should be 1 million. Right. So we'll move forward. New office building was opened on 1st of January 2020, and depreciation was charged for that date by the company. So even though the asset is available for use, the company opened this building on 1st of January, and the depreciation has been calculated from 1st of January 2020 onwards. What does that mean? It implies that this depreciation, 3 months depreciation, has not been provided in the financials. So basically, the company depreciation starts from 1st of January 2020 onwards. ඒගොල්ලෝ 2020 ඉඳන් තමයි depreciation පටන් අරගෙන යන්නේ. But the asset is available for use from 1st of October onwards. So technically, for the remaining 3 months of the 2019 financial year, 1 million depreciation has to be there. So in that context, it is a situation where the company has done under depreciation. So in that context, this will be identified as an error which is identified by the auditor. Which is an error identified by the auditor, which has not been corrected in the financial statements. Right. So when you take this error alone, it will not exceed in the material level. මේ වරද විතරක් තනියම ගත්තොත් මේ material level එක exceed කරන්නේ නැහැ, because your overall material is 1.7 million, where the magnitude of this issue is basically 1 million. Are we clear? Are we clear up to that point?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Moving on. The company has capitalized the borrowing cost of rupees 1.5 million from 1st of October 2019 to 31st December 2019 on this new building. What the company has done is they have capitalized the borrowing cost. So they are going to test about the borrowing cost standard. So they have capitalized the borrowing cost for a period of 3 months. for a period of 3 months, which is amounting to how much? 1.5 million. 1.5 million borrowing cost, capitalization is there. My question is this correct? As per the borrowing cost standard, is this correct? No. In that context, this needs to be charged to P&L rather than capitalize. මොකද මේ capitalize කරන්න පුළුවන් ඔක්තෝබර් 1 වෙනිදා වෙනකම් විතරයි. ඊට පස්සේ capitalize කරන්න බෑ. Then the 3 months period you cannot capitalize because the asset is available for use. In that context, this 1.5 million should charge to the P&L. Again, this is identified as an error which is detected by the audit. Agreed? Right. So when you take error number 1, that is basically under depreciation. So the magnitude of the error is 1 million. Then the second issue, borrowing cost, capitalization. The magnitude of the issue is 1.5 million. So the total magnitude of those two errors would be how much? 2.5 million. This 2.5 million basically exceeding the initially decided material threshold. So in that context, you need to go for a modified opinion. You need to go for a modified opinion. You need to go for a modified opinion under which category? Under the segment of disagreement with management. Under the segment of disagreement with management. So when you have a disagreement with management, you need to go for a modified opinion. So when you are expressing a modified opinion, you need to take a call whether you are going for a qualified opinion or whether you are going for a adverse opinion. Whether you are going for a qualified opinion or whether you are going for a adverse opinion. So if the disagreement with management is material, you will go for a qualified opinion. If the disagreement with management is both material plus pervasive, then you will go for a adverse opinion. So this is the entire theory which has been tested in this question, which basically covers you what? SLA US 700. Clear? So when you get a question like this, you need to analyze this question in detail before you step into the answer. Clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Others, are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Okay. Do you want to take down this? Do you want to take down this?
Yes, sir. Done.
Me too, sir.
Okay. I'll give you another 1 minute. So anyone who wanted to take down this, you can take down. Right. Okay. Right. So what's the question? Assess the above matters on the audit opinion of Sara Trading financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2019. So that's what we have discussed. Number 2, recognize the type of audit opinion to be expressed if the auditor unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. What does that mean? That is basically applicable to a scope limitation. That is basically applicable to what? That is basically applicable to a scope limitation. So unable to obtain audit evidences mean basically you are having a scope limitation. So if you have a scope limitation, you're having two options. You go for a qualified opinion and you go for a disclaimer of opinion. Clear? So in order to summarize this, I'll give you a chart like this. Okay. So when you look at from opinion perspective, there are two types of opinions. Number one, unmodified. Unmodified opinion. Unmodified audit opinion. That is number one. You might have discussed all these when your lecturer discussing SLOS 700. Unmodified opinion, then you will be having modified opinion. Modified audit opinion. Modified audit opinion. Okay, so unmodified audit opinion is a situation where, as an auditor, you are expressing a clean opinion. As an auditor, you are expressing a clean opinion. But modified audit opinion, again further segregated into three. Number one, qualified opinion. Qualified opinion. Number two, adverse opinion. Number three, disclaimer of opinion. Disclaimer of opinion. So these are the three modifications. So qualified opinion, where you say, except for few matters, so the rest of the financial statements gives a true and fair view. Except for few matters, the financial statements gives a true and fair view. Adverse opinion is a situation where you will firmly say the financial statements, entire financial statement not gives a true and fair view. A true and fair view. Disclaimer of opinion is a situation where you are not expressing an opinion in the audit report. Not expressing an opinion in the audit report. In the audit report. Right. So you will go for a qualified opinion in two instances. When you have a disagreement with management, and when you have a scope limitation, both instances, it is material but not pervasive. Material but not pervasive. Then you will go for adverse opinion when you have a disagreement with management when you have a disagreement with management, both material and pervasive. Pervasive. Then you for a disclaimer of opinion, when there is a scope limitation, when there is a scope limitation, again which is both material and pervasive. So this is basically the summary
Sir, pervasive mean?
SLA 700. This is a summary of SLA 700s. Come again, they have asked a question.
Sir, pervasive mean?
That means the impact is spreaded across. Impact is widely spreaded. Pervasive means impact is widely spreaded. Widely spreaded. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Any further questions? Okay, do you want to take down this? Do you want to take down this?
What it says?
Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes, just take down. Right. Okay. Right. We'll go to question number 7. Mahela Private Limited is considering the change of existing auditor, RS Associates, due to delay in delivering the audit report for the last financial year. And the managing director of Mahela Private Limited is discussing with TM Associates to be appointed as a statutory auditor for the company for auditing the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2019. Explain 2 procedures that Mahela Private Limited should follow when replacing the existing auditor. That is basically they are going to test about Companies Act. Companies Act. Right. Then explain 2 procedures that TM Associate should perform after accepting the appointment as a statutory auditor. Right. Then Section B, the principle of confidentiality imposes an obligation on all professional accountants to refrain from using confidential information acquired as a result of the professional and business relationships of their person to their personal advantage or advantage of third parties. Once you read this, you need to understand that they are going to talk about what? Confidentiality. Nevertheless, there are circumstances where the professional accountants may be required to disclose confidential information. State 2 situations where the professional accountant may require to disclose the confidential information. So basically, this has been tested from ethical requirements. So when you read my tute, we have discussed 4 instances. These are considered as exception rules for the confidentiality. Exception rules for confidentiality. So there we discuss about 4. Out of those 4, you need to write down 2 to get the marks. Right. Right. Okay. A typical question which might come from section C. I have prepared this question the other way around. Okay, so we always need to prepare ourselves for unexpected situation. That is the key. So we always wanted to prepare ourselves for unexpected situations. So when you analyze the internal control questions for the last 5 papers, basically they have given a scenario and they wanted the student to identify the weaknesses. They wanted the students to identify the weaknesses. Here, what I have done here is I have given a scenario where you need to identify the strengths. Not the weaknesses, you need to identify the strengths which basically prevails in the scenarios. Right, so we'll read and see. Nilakshi has been recently recruited as an assistant accountant of HL Hotels PLC. Nilakshi noted during her induction program that there are around 10,000 stakeholders who are not involved in managing the hotel. The board of directors comprise 5 directors appointed by the shareholders of the company. After following the induction program, the accountant informed Nilakshi about the job description and the following aspects of the procurement process of the hotel. So they are going to talk about the procurement process. අපි කතා කළේ ගැනුම් සහන අහිමියෝ කියන. So in that context, you need to understand the theories which we discuss in the classroom. එතකොට when you want to answer a question like this, basically you need to understand the process which we discuss in the classroom. So we'll analyze that again in this situation. So when we are discussing this theory in the classroom, we have taken several departments. Okay, so you will be having the production department. Production department. Then you have the purchasing department. Then you are having the warehouse and the finance. In our theory class, we all discuss these flowcharts in details. Right. So the production department is there. Then the purchasing department is there. Warehouse is there and the finance is there. So let's say production department wanted some materials to do their production activity. In that context, the production department wanted to prepare a document under the department head signature. This document is referred as what? This document is referred as PR, purchase requisition. It has 2 copies. Then the original PR will go to the purchasing department, and the second PR, the copy will be remain as a book copy in this department. Based on the purchase requisition, which is received from the recipient department, the procurement department will prepare a document which basically have 4 copies, and it has to be approved by the purchasing manager. This document is referred as what? This is referred as PO, purchase order. So the original purchase order goes to who? Goes to the customer. Sorry, goes to the supplier, not the customer, supplier. Goes to the supplier. Then the second copy goes to the warehouse and the third copy goes to the finance. Right. When supplier comes to hand over the goods to the warehouse, basically the storekeeper have the purchase order in his hand. So that is why the second copy of the purchase order, sends to warehouse. So in that context, the responsible party of the warehouse, the storekeeper, has to check the PO with the goods. He has to check the PO details with the goods, which basically bought by the supplier, and if it is in line, they will be accepting it, and once you accepted it, they will be raising the GRN, goods received note. But before the storekeepers raises the GRN, they should check the physical conditions of the goods with the PO as well. Right. Then finally, supplier basically goes to the finance department to collect the payment. So that is purchased from our side, but that is from sales from supplier side. In that context, our finance department will receive the document called sales invoice from the supplier. Right. Then the question is, at the time you receive the sales order, whether the payments clerk or the payments executive make the payment? No. He will be already having the PO in his hand, because that is why the third copy of the PO went to the finance department. Then he will be checking the PO with the invoice. He will be checking the PO with the invoice, and he will be checking the GRN as well, because the person who is handling the payments needs to make sure that the goods received physically to the stores before releasing the payment. That is what you referred as what? Three-way matching. That is what you referred as what? Three-way matching. Upon completing the three-way matching, the finance people will release the payment to the supplier. Okay, so that is a standard process which we discuss. So you need to have that standard process in your head when you want to answer for a question like this. Right. So what they're asking? So basically state 4 guidelines to be followed by the director. So those are tested from corporate governance. Identified 5 strengths in the procurement process of HL Hotels PLC. You need to identify 5 strengths. අපිට කලින් ඒවා weakness නේ හොයාගන්න කිව්වේ. Here you need to identify 5 strengths. Right. So we'll see. All capital nature items are purchased with the approval of board of directors. It's a strength. Proper approval needs to be obtained when purchasing a capital nature item. So in that context, this is considered as one of the strengths in this process. There are registered suppliers. For supplying all the items. Prices of the items do not vary unless the finance manager approves it through the procurement committee. So the prices are fixed. They are having a registered suppliers and the prices are fixed. Again, this is considered as a strength. It's basically an indication of a good procurement system. When the need arises for inventory, it will be notified by the store's manager. When the requirement arises, it will be notified the store's manager with the system generated request note. That is what we referred as PR in the previous example. And PRNs approved by the respective department heads. So the requisition notes needs to be approved by the department heads as well. Again, this is considered as a good point, a strength. System generated purchase order raised by the assistant accountant. Here I am having a question mark. What is the question? Why the assistant accountant raises the PO? Why the assistant accountant raises the PO? Based on the process which we discussed, basically PO should be raised by the procurement department, purchasing department. Finance people should not involve either for the preparation of the PO or for the approval of the PO. Right. When the value is less than 200,000, it is approved by the accountant and the finance manager approves it when the value up to 1 million. Right. So here you will be having a plus point plus a weak point as well. At the time of receiving the items, goods received note are generated by the store's clerk and those are entered to the computer system on the same day. The stock is updated on the same day. Okay, and the GRN will be prepared by the storekeeper. Again, this is identified as a strength in the system. When payment is made on supplier's invoice, it should be agreed with PO and GRN before generating the payment voucher by the assistant accountant. They are referring to what? Three-way matching. Again, this is considered as a strength in the process. Payment vouchers are approved and the checks are signed by the signatories as per the limits. So this company is having delegated authority limits. Again, this is considered as a strength. The company uses computerized accounting system for the financial reporting. So how many strengths are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Altogether 6 strengths are there, so that you need to write down all these 6. Because I have prepared this question based on unexpected situation. When you analyze the last 5 papers, they have given a scenario and they wanted you to identify the weaknesses. But here what I have done is to give you a process which has more controls, and I wanted you to highlight the strengths of this process. Right. State the objective of each those strengths identified in C above. Then list 2 elements of control environment. They are talking about the elements of the internal control environment, and control activities to be tested, activities to be established in HL Hotels Limited. Then they are basically wanted you to check the general controls and the application controls as well. So this is basically an area which has been tested from computerized accounting systems scope. Clear? Right. Okay, then question number 9. Again, applicable to what? Applicable for a data stage analysis. So we discussed data stage analysis in detail in the classroom. So that what are the questions? State 4 reasons why the proper planning for the audit is required to the auditor. Basically, they are going to test SLOS 300 audit planning. Okay, list 5 sources that used to be get an understanding of Sri Lanka Fabric PLC. They are going to test out SLOS 315, knowledge of the business. Identify 6 areas that you need special attention in performing the audit procedures on Sri Lanka Fabric PLC. List 4 audit procedures to be performed when auditing debtors balance. So here they are going to talk about audit evidences and the procedures. Explain 3 audit procedures to obtain audit evidences. So how many procedures are there? Basically there are 8 procedures. What are those 8? Fixed asset inspection, document inspection, observation, questionnaires, confirmations, recalculations, reperformance, and analytical review procedures. So out of those 8, you need to list down, you need to explain 3 to obtain those 6 marks. Clear? Any questions? Okay, Tuhini, are we clear? Rishma? Ifas? Asra?
Okay, sir.
Right, okay. Right. Finally, okay, I just want to give a brief update about how you need to tackle the exam. Okay, so I just want to give a brief update of how you are going to tackle the exam. Right. When you look at from FCA paper perspective, when you look at from FCA paper perspective, for section A, then you will be having section B, and you will be having section CA as well. Right. When you consider about the time management, concentrate. So when you want to consider about the time management, for section A, maximum time that you can spend for section A is 30 minutes max. You are not required to spend anything which is more than 30 minutes. Section A එකට පැය භාගයක් විතරයි ගන්න. පැය භාගයට වඩා ගන්න එපා. So basically we will be having 7 minutes and 30 seconds max for a question. විනාඩි 7මාරක් තියෙනවා හොඳටම ඇති. Section A එකට because section A I would say 100% theory. 100% theory. So whatever the theories which you are learning in the classroom will be tested as it is at the exam. So therefore you should save your time when it's come to section B and section C. Then when it's come to section B, maximum allocation would be 60 marks. Max. Maximum allocation would be 60 marks. Basically 20 maximum minutes would be 60 minutes. So 20 minutes max for a question because you will be having 3 questions. No? 20 into 3 is basically 60 minutes. Why I wanted you to spend 60 minutes there? Basically section B is a combination of theory plus practical. It's a combination of theory plus practical. So therefore you should have more time for section B when you compare section A with section B. But remember, section A and section B together, you need to finish within 90 minutes max. You need to finish within 90 minutes back. විනාඩි 90කට වඩා time එකක් ගන්න එපා. Clear? Then make sure that you will get in between 40 to 45 marks out of 50 for section A and section B. For section A and section B, make sure that you will be getting in between 40 to 45 marks for section A and section B. So if you want to go to this level, you need to score 20 out of 20 for section A. I don't think this is difficult. You need to get maximum out of section A. If you get 20 out of 20, you will be having a little breathing space when you come to section B, so that you can focus on 20 marks out of 30, so that you will be reaching the minimum level of 40. Agreed? If you can obtain another 5 marks more for section B, then you will be reaching to the top. Okay. Remember, if you can score more than 40, for section A and section B, I would say you should not worry about the final result. Because anyway, cutoff mark would be 50. If you obtain 40, then you will be having another 50 marks to obtain the 10 marks, which is close eyes, quite simple. But if you're obtaining in between 30 to 40 marks for section A and B, section A එකටයි B එකටයි 30යි 40 අතර නම්, then I would say you are basically standing in the middle. You are basically standing in the middle. Based on the way you answer for section C, you will be either fallen into the fail category or you will be fallen into the pass category. Agree? So let's say a student obtained 30 marks. Out of this 50, another long way to go to come to the cutoff point. Agreed? So in that context, if you are obtain marks in between 30 to 40, I would say you are in the middle, in the fence, on the fence. But if you obtain less than 30, I'm sorry to say you should repeat the exam again. You had to repeat the exam again. Agreed? So therefore, try your level best to capitalize on section A. Section A would give you a clear competitive advantage. Then try your level best to capitalize on section B as well. So if you can clearly capitalize section A and section B together, you will be definitely having a competitive edge or competitive advantage. Right. So when you come to section C, I wanted all of you to have 90 minutes. I wanted all of you to have 90 minutes, 45 minutes for a question. 45 minutes for a question. Because I wanted to have more time. I wanted to have more time for section C because it's, I would say, 100% practical. So therefore, out of this 180 minutes, I would like to have 50% of the allocation for section C. Agreed? Yes or no? Clear? Okay. Someone is asking, sir, what's the order of questions you recommend? Basically, you cannot have a specific order. So you have altogether 9 questions in the paper. Out of that 9, you need to write answer for all the 9 questions. You don't have optional questions, right? So therefore, I cannot recommend that you should start from section C, section B, and section A. So straight away start from section A. Okay, rather than you starting from section C, straight away starting from section A. But once you completed section A and section B, make sure that you have basically out of danger. That is the key. ඔයා section A එකයි section B එකයි ඉවර කරනකොට make sure කරගන්නවා danger zone එකෙන් අයින් වෙනවයි කියන එක. So if you want to get out yourself from the danger zone, you should score minimum 40 or plus. Agreed? So if you can score 40 or plus, I should say you should not worry about the final result. You will be definitely passing the exam. මෙතෙන්ට පුතා 40ක් දාලා තව ලකුණු 10ක් ගන්න බැරි වෙන්නේ නැහැ මේ ලකුණු 50. Agreed? So therefore, starting from section A, it's prefer rather than you starting from section C. So upon completing section A and section B, make sure that you get yourself out from the danger area. Clear? Right. Okay. So basically, this is what I wanted all of you to, this is what I wanted to discuss with all of you today. So just to give in detail understanding about how the paper will be structured and how to tackle a practical question. So there may be students who are basically learned from me in the physical class where we have completed all the syllabus 1.5 months ahead. අපි මාස එකමාරකට කලින් syllabus එක ඉවර කළා. Then we had done almost 6 papers in the class. With this paper as well, I would say 7 papers. Past papers 5ක්ම අපි අරගෙන කරා. Then we did a model paper. Then with this paper as well, they have basically a coverage of 7 papers. So completing the syllabus basically 1.5 months earlier. Then completing what you call a comprehensive paper discussions covering 7 papers. I think none of the other competitive institutions have done. So basically you will be having the competitive advantage, and the people who are joining today, who are basically purchasers, vLearning online FCA pack. So basically I have covered the most preferable area where the examiner might be testing. So that focus on those areas as well. and the students who are basically joining, who are not physically came to our class, and the people who have not basically purchases the vLearning platform, again, I would say, concentrate on the areas which we have discussed today itself, whether you are a JMCN or whether you are a student who basically went to another institute. So the most important factor for us is to pass the exam. So if you can pass the exam, so that is the ultimate satisfaction as lecturers which we are receiving. Okay, so these are my contact numbers. So if you have any further clarifications, so you are free to call me at any given point of time. You have another 1 week to go to the exam. Okay, so note 775-421-927 and note 779-539-969. So these two mobiles are 24/7 on. So you can call me at any given point of time, or you can drop me a text message, and you can give your feedback on this session as well. And you can contact me at any given point of time if you have any clarifications with regard to the subject called FCA. Okay, so let me wind up. Wishing you all the very best for the upcoming AAT final exam. And I'm hope to see you, all of you. If you are a student who is willing to do chartered, I wanted to see all of you at the corporate level in advanced audit and assurance subject. Manoj, are there any comments? What comments there not? Any questions? Okay, so one question came from Rosemary, sir, but we have not done any practical questions in vLearning. Rosemary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So I can do a thing like this. So you can collaborate with one of the students who basically physically came to the class. So anyone who physically came to my class, අපේ physical පන්තිර ආපු කට්ටිය කවුරු ඉන්නවද? How many are there? Okay, Rishma is there, Kiad is there. Rishma?
Yes, sir.
Rishma, you have all the full answers which we have discussed thus far, right? For all the papers?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone who wanted to take a copies of those papers, the answers for those papers which we discussed, I would recommend you to contact Vishma, and so that identify a methodology where you can take the answer sheets.
Okay, sir.
Okay, I need, sir, please write Anfas. Anfas, you are basically a vLearning student.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We didn't do any practical question, but we did some questions in our home, not fully.
Okay.
Small.
Right. Okay. Okay. Contact Rishma and try your level best to get all this. If not, I'll do a thing like this. So I can ask JMC management to take photocopies of the full answers which I given to the student, so that if you can come to JMC, so that you can collect it. But better to give a call tomorrow morning and get clarified yourself before you come.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Right. Okay. So we'll stop for the day. And again, I'm wishing you all the very best for the upcoming AAT final exam. And if you are a student who basically planning to do chartered, I wanted to see all of you in corporate level, advanced audit and assurance subject, where I'm basically conducting the lectures at corporate level as well. So I'm wishing you all the very best once again, and wish you all the very best for your future endeavors as well. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.